I got into this hobby for the gaming aspect of it, and even though I started to gravitate more towards the painting, the hobbying side, I still like to get a good game in now and again. Unfortunately, 40K really isn't that much fun to play, and that's why lately I've been kind of branching out and trying different miniatures games to get my gaming fix while I still stick with GW models and things for the hobby side. What's going on, guys? It's Richard here from Crash Course Hobbies, and today I'm going to talk to you about my new favorite skirmish game, Deadzone from Mantic Games, and give you several reasons why you should check it out and a couple why you shouldn't. So like I said, I love the hobby aspect of GW. I mean, I feel like their models are some of the best out there. I mean, it's pretty indisputable at this point. But what is generally agreed upon, I think, by a lot of people is that 40K just isn't a fun game to play. It's convoluted, it has an archaic I go, you go system, it's very swingy. And while I still enjoy getting my models on the table and playing 40K once in a while, it's certainly not my game of choice. And that's why I kind of started branching out and trying out other games like Cyberpunk Red Combat Zone, tried Firefight from Mantic, Deadzone, I've tried Frostgrave, Stargrave, and really just continue to try other stuff to find that one game that really satisfies my gaming fix while still having those nice GW models that I can use in those games and also just, kind of save those for my hobby. So I want to talk to you guys about Deadzone because this was one that really pleasantly surprised me. A buddy of mine and I started playing this game, and we really started to, once you kind of get a couple games under your belt and you really know how the rule set works, you're like, man, this has got some really nice nuance to it. There's some really cool little aspects about it that make it really fun and really enjoyable. So let's dive right into what is good about Deadzone. So the first thing I like about Deadzone is that it's affordable. The models are much cheaper than GWs, I would say about by half. And also you get a lot more stuff for your money. So if you pick up a starter set, you will get a full force on both sides, as well as the force list book, which is going to have all of the data sheets for every single faction. So it'll be the only book that you need. And then the rule book, which has got everything else in it. So you get both of these in a starter box with the two opposing forces. So if you buy other factions later, you don't have to go out and buy a codex or something like that. And Mantic generally updates their rules and their force lists about once a year, and so sometimes they'll have them on erratas and stuff online, or you can pick up the updated books. Like they came out with the Command Protocols book, which was Firefight's updated book, but it was like $30 or something, so it's generally a lot cheaper. Now that does lead into one of the other drawbacks about it, though, is that while these models are mostly high impact polystyrene models on sprues, very similar to GW, the quality isn't quite as there, and there tends to be less variety in the sculpts. So for like the zombies, for some of the Plague factions and the Maison Labs, which I've been playing, there's only really 5 different zombies. And so if you end up running, it's more of an issue in Firefight, I guess, when you're playing the full army game, but in Deadzone specifically, you still might notice it because 5 sculpts when you need 20 or 40 of them or whatever it might be, it's kind of an issue. And the quality of the sculpts themselves is not nearly to the level of GW, but I would say that it's like a good B minus kind of level. And then some of the bigger models are made out of PVC. And so depending on the packs that you get, I've also gotten some that it's basically like just a box of board game minis, where they're all pre-assembled. They're all that kind of PVC plastic. And so they don't lend themselves to like really nice painting. I generally just speed paint all my stuff from Mantic with just Army Painter speed paints or contrast or whatever, and that's fine. But it you can still use your GW minis or whatever else because the factions are all pretty adjacent. So you got your orcs, you got your humans, your plague guys, zombies, kind of Tau like aliens, stuff like that. So you can kind of find proxies or whatever if you want to do it that way. The next thing I really like about it is that it uses a grid-based system for the map. So you don't ever have to measure or take time to fumble with a ruler or anything like that. So you just moving your guys 2 squares forward or 1 square up, 1 square forward. And this actually makes it move a lot quicker than you would think, because when you have to stop and measure and hem and haw over what you're going to do and everything on like 40K or Kill Team, being able to just say, okay, my guy moves 3 squares forward when he rushes, and just move him the 3 squares on the grid. Now, of course, the downside to this is that you have to use their proprietary either paper mats that come with it or buy there's only 2 neoprene options for these grid-based maps from them. So you don't really have a lot of options in terms of buying other neoprene mats and stuff for your guys to fight on, also means you can't really use your old ones. And this was kind of a drawback for me because I do have a pretty huge collection of mats for Warhammer. And so not being able to use those, I guess you could maybe sacrifice one and use like a Sharpie and draw a grid on it. Or if you really wanted to get kind of, creative with it, you could use like electrical tape or something and slice it real thin and tape down a grid. But I feel like that would be almost more trouble than it's worth. It also does use proprietary terrain, which also follows the same cube and grid system. So while it makes the game move very quickly, and very, very easy to play, it does mean that you can't necessarily use your normal terrain that you might have laying around. I do want to stop the video real quick just to say a quick thank you to all of you who have subscribed so far. It's been just a couple of months and we're really growing this thing quickly, so thank you so much. For those of you that haven't already, I'd love to see you subscribe and join the family. But anyways, guys, thank you again, and we'll get back to the video. Now, another really cool thing about Deadzone is that it uses D8s instead of D6s. And this may sound like kind of a trivial change, but it's actually really cool because it means that there's that much more room for balancing. So instead of just having hitting on 2 through 6s or something like that, you can now have hitting on 7s, hitting on 8s, whatever it might be. So there is, mathematically quite a spread between those numbers for being able to balance all the different factions. Another cool rule kind of on top of the D8s is they have something called exploding 8s. So no matter what situation you find yourself in, if you roll an 8, you automatically get to roll an extra die. And so what I like about this is that every 8 can proc an extra roll. So even if it's, you roll an 8, you roll again, you get an 8, you can roll again and get an 8. So you can kind of just unlimited number of 8s potentially. And so I like this because it means that no one combat is hopeless on any side. So you might have the smallest guy versus the biggest guy. You might have a really poor chance of defending against, this guy's shots. But if you happen to roll 2 8s and then proc another 8, it's like, oh, well, then he's okay. It just gives you a little bit more kind of cinematic moments that can happen. And while maybe it's not the most strategic type gameplay or, strictly game focused on the strategy aspect, like it's just makes for some really funny moments when you do happen to get a bunch of 8s in a row. And for me, I like playing these kind of games because of letting the dice kind of create the narrative, if you will. So I mentioned that this game is much more affordable, so you can pick up a starter box for like $100 with both the rule book, the terrain, and 2 starter armies. You can also pick up like a full, kind of what's equivalent to like a GW Battle Force, and this would give you enough stuff to kind of start playing Firefight or Deadzone. And then they also have the actual like Deadzone boxes. Those are like generally around 30 or 40 bucks for like an entire Deadzone army, although those were more board game minis that were pre-assembled. So, for me, I would almost just go with the Firefight box because you're going to get a lot more plastic and then you can tailor that towards it. And those generally cost about 80 to 90 bucks, and you get about 1,000 points worth of Firefight models and then about, enough to create several Deadzone factions. Now, one other really cool thing is that Mantic has an online army builder for this game, and it has all the data sheets, it has all of the rules and everything for your factions. And so you could build all of that online and print it out. So you don't even necessarily need the Force List book if you have that army builder online. And you do have to subscribe to it. I think it's like $2 a month or something like that if you want the full version, or you can create, I think it's 2 lists with the free version. The last thing I want to leave y'all with is a glowing positive from me, and that's that the rule set is just so slick. I mean, it is one of those where you take a game or two to learn how to play it, and then it just is so intuitive. It's so easy to just kind of know how the terrain works and how the advantages work. And it's just, after playing a lot of 40K and having to consult your rules, consult your data sheets, go back through and look at stuff, it's exhausting. And it's just so nice to be able to look at the board and know what's going to happen and not have to study the game. One of my favorite things is that all of the modifiers for when you're shooting or when you're dodging or whatever it might be, none of them augment the actual dice roll. So if your character needs a 4 to hit, they'll always need a 4 to hit. What changes is the amount of dice you roll. So if you have unrestricted line of sight to the target and you're shooting, you add 2 dice to your roll. So your chances of getting hits increases, but you don't ever have to do kind of the mental gymnastics of being like, okay, well now he's in cover, so he's -2 and I'm +1 and whatever else, and trying to figure out what you need to roll. So instead it's like, okay, I will add +2 dice because I have a clear line of sight, and then 1 extra dice because I have height advantage, and then he will add a dice extra to his save if he's in cover. So it doesn't ever change what you need to roll numbers wise, it's just how many dice. And I feel like that is just such a refreshing way to approach it because you don't have to think so much. And for me, I'm not great at thinking, so it's just really nice to not have to do it. So anyways, guys, if you're into skirmish games or you're looking for kind of a lower budget alternative to 40K, something that you can bust out and knock a full size game out of it in about an hour or even quicker. I think I've played a full game of it in like 40 minutes before. And I'm not an expert by any means. I haven't played it like a ton. So you could absolutely smash out a game of this in no time. It's really beginner friendly. I think it's a great gateway kind of game for newer war gamers to try. Just kind of let them know that, you know, maybe the models aren't as good quality, so you do get a little frustrated painting sometimes. But again, I think it's easy to overlook that considering it's at such an attractive price point when you can get an entire, you know, two-player box starter set for less than the cost of 2 small squads from GW. So anyways, guys, I'll link a couple of boxes I recommend y'all check out down below. Let me know if you played this game before, what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for sticking around. You can like, subscribe. I've got lots more videos coming for you in the future. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Support your local game shops when you can. And I will see you in the next one.